to go.
Welcome back, Buc Bros. This is episode 3 of the podcast. We're going back to the 4-quarter format, and we got a great episode for you guys. I'm going to be bringing you a preseason recap. Going to switch it over to my main man, Bryce, over there. He's going to be going over some roster letdowns and surprises. We're going to circle back for the second half. I'm going to bring you some season predictions, and then we're wrapping it all up with the game preview of game number 1 against the Saints this Sunday. That's Bryce's job. But for now, I hope you guys are ready for the Bucs season to start. Man, I needed some Buc football in my life. I'm stoked. We're in week number 1. We got 17 weeks of football, and I'm just ready to get it started. So with that, we're going to jump straight into quarter number 1 with our preseason recap. Now, for those of you who watched it with me, the Buccaneers finished the preseason with a record of 2-2. We won our first 2 games against the Dolphins and the Titans, and then we unfortunately dropped the last 2 against the Lions and the Jags. Now, overall, I thought the preseason was pretty good. I gave it a grade of a B. I think we showed a lot of strengths there, but we also showed that we got to work some things out, and we'll be going over that right now. I think one of the main areas that we showed a strength was our depth at wide receiver and quarterback. Now, looking at the quarterbacks, we've got Fitzpatrick, Jameis Winston, and Ryan Griffin all making the 53-man roster. And our lowest rated quarterback of the preseason, of course, is our regular season starter, Mr. Fitzmagic himself. He came in with a 79.9 QB rating. Now, the thing about Fitzpatrick was he wasn't flashy. He wasn't getting big chunks of yards, but he was moving the ball down. He did get into the red zone a few times. He didn't throw for any touchdowns, but another good stat for him is he didn't throw any interceptions. In fact, my favorite stat of the entire preseason is of the 3 quarterbacks we kept on our roster, not one of them threw an interception. We have no interceptions on the scorecard for the preseason. That's awesome. Ball security is a premium at this league, and our quarterbacks know we need to handle the ball and not let it get into our opponent's hands. Speaking of the other quarterbacks, Jameis Winston was actually the highest rated quarterback of any NFL team this entire preseason. He was actually listed as PFF's All-Pro preseason team with a grade of 93. That's pretty stellar. He also made that team with Gerald McCoy. Just a little fun fact for you guys. So Jameis Winston looked pretty good, and Ryan Griffin looked really good, actually. That man knows how to pass. I can't tell you how many times I saw receivers just go up the right side of the field, and he's just dropping it in like raindrops in a bucket, dude. That man knows how to pass the ball. So all quarterbacks this entire preseason were phenomenal. Other than that, wide receivers, I think we all knew we had the depth at wide receiver, and I think we added to it. We got Mike Evans going after his 5th straight 1,000-yard receiving season. We've got Deshaun Jackson, who finally made some big plays in the preseason. We had that bomb against the Titans that Jameis Winston threw to him that the cameraman didn't understand what was going on for that one. We have Chris Godwin, who looks like he's picking up where he left off. I think we all remember his last game against the Saints in 2017 where he was an absolute monster and caught the game-winning touchdown. It looks like he's just picking up where he left off. We've got Adam Humphries, who's a serviceable slot receiver and also returning failed field goals, 109 yards to the house. Thank you, Adam Humphries, the humpback whale, as we like to call him here. Freddie Martino, the serviceable backup. We've seen him a couple of times in a couple of games of the past couple seasons. He's okay. He's nothing to write home about, but he will catch the ball. He does show, that he has the receiving skills to be an NFL wide receiver. And then we got a guy who I was surprised by, Justin Watson. I hadn't heard of him until the preseason, but it looks like he's taken a lot of pages out of Mike Evans' book. He's got a big frame, and he knows how to use it to box out cornerbacks, go up and high point that ball. He's doing a lot of good things. I'm actually excited for him, and I wouldn't be surprised if all of the receivers got at least 5 receptions this season. It's just that deep of a group. So, and also, speaking of depth, an area of concern for me is the offensive line. Now, I'm not going to rag on them. I actually think they did a pretty decent job in the preseason at protecting the quarterback. If you look at the stats of the 3 quarterbacks we kept, only 3 sacks in the entire preseason. That's pretty good. But I am concerned for the depth there. I think we all saw Donovan Smith go down with an injury in the preseason. Now, he's listed as doubtful on the injury report, but I think the consensus is he will start week 1 against the Saints, which I'm hoping for, crossing my fingers. But I did not know who was going to replace him when he went down. It turned out to be Ledke, who did a very good job, I would say, for being thrust in there so soon. So it just caused concern for me because I didn't know who our backups were, and I didn't know how good they were, and if I know we rag a lot on Donovan Smith as Bucs fans, and if he's our starter and he goes down, it can't bode well for us if we got somebody who's not as good as him replacing him. So I'm doing all I can, crossing the fingers, looking out for ladders so I don't walk under them. I'm doing all the rituals I can to pray that the offensive line stays healthy this entire season. Help me out, Bucs fans. We'll see how that goes. Another area of concern for me was the safety. If you look at the roster, we've got Chris Conte, Isaiah Johnson, Jordan Whitehead, and Justin Evans. I'm going to let this sink into you. Our veteran on the safety is Chris Conte. Chris Conte. That's never a good statement. I'm literally throwing up in my mouth as I'm speaking it. So the safety position is a real area of concern for me. In the preseason, I saw a lot of blown assignments. I know there was one play against the Lions where Matt Stafford was rolling out to the right. He's pointing his receiver down, the camera pans down, and this receiver is wide open. Some safety blew their assignment. Chris Conte had to run down to get the receiver before he went into the end zone, and he got up looking around like, what are you guys doing? I think that was a blown assignment by Jordan Whitehead. We got to get better at that. It looked like Jordan Whitehead allowed a lot of receivers by him. I know there was another play where he allowed the receiver by him, and he caused a pass interference that was pretty costly for us. It got the other team a lot of yards. So it looked like we just weren't familiar with our assignments, weren't familiar with who had who and whose responsibility was what. Yeah, Chris Conte, veteran safety, leader of the group. Ugh. So safety needs to improve a lot. I hope Mike Smith works with them directly, gets them knowing what they're supposed to do. But again, overall, the preseason, pretty good. 2-2. I'm not too worried about it. We showed some good signs. So if you look at the roster, we see a lot of depth there. We see a lot of playmakers there. And speaking of the roster, quarter 2 is coming at you right now. Bryce is bringing you some roster letdowns and surprises. Bryce, get into it, man.
Thanks, Ryan, and welcome to the second quarter of the Buc Bros Podcast. It's finally here. It's finally happening. Week 1, NFL 2018 season. Woo-hoo! Man, I wanted to get that out. I'm so amped. I hope you guys are too. So let's get into it. So here in the second quarter, we're going to talk about the roster surprises and letdowns from the 53-man Buccaneers 2018 roster that was announced last week. So, for surprises and kind of a letdown too, I thought the first thing that really jumped out at me when they released the 53-man roster was the cut of Keith Tandy and Josh Robinson, two mainstays over the last couple of years of Buccaneers football. When I first was going through the roster and saw that the Tandy Man, as we affectionately called him over here, was no longer going to be a part of the team, I was definitely a little bit disappointed, definitely let down, if you will. But and then the real surprise to me, though, was the release of Josh Robinson, seeing as he was our special teams captain over the last couple of seasons. And knowing that, especially Dirk Cutter puts an emphasis on our special teams, maybe not our kicking game so much, but hopefully that will be better this year. It was a surprise for me to see that he was no longer with the Buccaneers as well. So, in thinking about it, I think the consensus was that the front office was looking to let some of the younger players get the playing time. Specifically, the safety level, Justin Evans is going to start. And I think Jordan Whitehead showed enough during the preseason that I think the front office felt comfortable and the coaching staff felt comfortable only holding on to the 4 safeties, and that left kind of Keith Tandy not useful anymore, if you will. So expendable is the word I was looking for. So, obviously, Keith Tandy had some really good moments in his Buccaneers history. I think the fondest moment of mine was the 2016 home game against New Orleans in December, where he intercepted Drew Brees on I think it was a button route to Willie Snead to help seal that game and to seal our 5th victory in a row as we positioned ourselves to try to make the playoffs back in 2016. And then for Josh Robinson, I believe, he was a hell of a special teams player. Great punt, kick coverage guy. I think again that same game, I think he was the guy who downed the ball at the half-yard line on that amazing punt. So two really good, solid guys that I was disappointed to see leave the roster and no longer be a part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization. So I wish them both well in their careers going forward. But I do have to say that I kind of agree with management's decision to kind of let the younger players take the reins as we go further into our youth movement here in the Tampa Bay area. Another surprise to me was the keeping of 6 wide receivers on the roster. Obviously, we knew that Deshaun Jackson, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Adam Humphries were going to be your 4 mainstays. And then with our 5th round pick, we took Justin Watson this year. And, he showed enough in the preseason. He really had a great preseason, so it was not a surprise for me to see him make the roster. But I thought those would be really the only 5 receivers that we would keep. 5 wide receivers is pretty much your main set. That's all that will ever really be on the field. Obviously, with injuries, there comes some time where you'll need some backups. So 6 wide receivers isn't a crazy conception. But I definitely think that, there were other areas, offensive line in particular, that we could have probably used another roster spot instead of a 6 wide receiver. That being said, with them choosing Freddie Martino over the likes of Bobo Wilson, Bernard Reedy, and then who else am I forgetting? I think that was the only 2. Makes sense to me. I think Freddie Martino was the most productive of those 3 that were vying for that last receiver spot. So I think Freddie Martino is going to be a great addition. I don't know how much benefit he does on special teams like kick coverage. I think he has done some kick returns and punt returns before, so he probably is a valuable asset there. That being said, I think his best value is obviously at being a reserve receiver. So, but again, I was surprised to see that he made the roster. Not so much for his production over the past couple of years or this preseason in particular, more so in the fact that we're keeping 6 wide receivers on the roster. And then my other kind of letdown that I thought, this really isn't a roster move. It's more of a depth chart kind of move. The biggest letdown I thought coming from this preseason was the decision to make Ronald Jones the 3rd string running back behind Peyton Barber and Jacquez Rogers. Now, I can't say I'm totally surprised by the move based on his preseason. Ronald Jones didn't really show too much in the 4 games that he played. He did have a couple of scores. He did, there was a couple nice runs there, a couple nice catches here and there. I think the Detroit game, he had a nice little wheel route that went for about 30 yards. But overall, word out of camp and kind of word out of, and word in the area, if you will, is that he's kind of struggling to learn the playbook. He's kind of struggling to learn the pass protections. And I think he's not going to be able to make that move up the depth chart until he starts earning the trust of the coaches. And so far, it doesn't seem like they trust him. So that's not really a shock or surprise. It's just really more of a letdown. I don't think we drafted him with our first pick in the 2nd round for him to be a 3rd stringer coming in. I think, we talked about this in the first episode. We really saw him kind of being a fantasy breakout, an offensive player of the year breakout this year based on all of his success in college. But so far, it doesn't look like that it has translated to the NFL that well. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make assumptions based on 4 preseason games. I don't think anybody's here going to say that he's going to be a terrible running back or he's going to be a bust, if you will. But it is, again, like I said, a letdown to see that he's going to be a 3rd stringer starting the season. Do I think he'll get some touches in the first game for New Orleans? Yeah, absolutely. But probably somewhere in the line of 5 to 10 carries. So hopefully he'll make the most out of those, and then he'll start earning the trust of the coaching staff. But for going forward, Peyton Barber is definitely an effective runner. He's not so much of a passing threat. So obviously when he's in the game, it kind of tips our hand that, it's going to be a running play or play action, if you will. But he's not going to be out there catching, passes or doing anything like a obviously not Le'Veon Bell, but, and then with Quiz, he's not so much of a running threat as he is as a pass protection and a pass threat. So again, that kind of tips our hands a little bit when he's out there on third down situations. But obviously, Cutter has a trust in Quiz that he doesn't have in the other two backs on third down, and that's probably the main reason why he's our second string running back, going into our first game against New Orleans. So obviously, I'm hoping that Ronald Jones is going to turn the corner here anytime soon, maybe even this first game, and we'll see him flourish as the season goes on. But until then, not much we can do but root for Mr. Barber and Mr. Rogers, if you will. All right, well, with that being said, I think I heard the whistle, and I think it's time for halftime. I'll see you guys in the third quarter.
Woo! Man, I'm pumped up after that halftime. We're bringing you quarter number 3 in the second half now. This is season predictions. Now, in the beginning episode, we gave you a season overall record, ceiling of 10-6. I'm thinking that's going to happen. For this segment, I'm going to give you some bold predictions on players' seasons. That's right, I've got 3 juicy hot takes for you. Let's get into them. Number 1, we're going to have our first double-digit sack guy since Simeon Rice in 2005. That's right, Bucs fans. JPP bringing home the bacon, getting 11.5 sacks. He's going to be in quarterbacks' faces all season. I think he's going to have a monster year. In the preseason, he was lining up on the right side of the defensive line. I'd like to see him move over and switch over to the left end, get him by Gerald McCoy, let him do his thing. Now, if you ever watch Gerald McCoy, you see he splits the tackle and the guard, goes right up that seam to get the quarterback. I think JPP could help him do that, getting the tackle in the backfield, making him work back there, creating more distance between him and the guard. Gerald McCoy just sneaks up in there, getting in people's faces. But I think JPP is going to have a monster year. We needed sacks. We needed QB pressures. Jason Light said, let me go out and get a big name. JPP's coming back home. He said, let me do it for the home fans. And he's going to be giving us 11.5 sacks. That's right, Bucs fans. Put it on the board. Tell me I'm wrong. Take a picture. I don't care. It's going to happen. Bringing you juicy hot take number 2. Peyton Barber going to rush for 1,000 or more yards this season. I don't know why many people are sleeping on this kid. The man knows how to run. If you ever watch him, he runs with purpose, he runs with drive, and he fights for those extra yards. Good thing about him is he's ball secure as well. He only has 2 fumbles in his 2 years with the Bucs. He holds on to the ball, and that's what we need. The man has taken advantage of every opportunity given to him. He started out of the practice squad as an undrafted free agent. He's worked his way up to starting for us in the 2018 season. He's going to be hungry. He's going to look to make a name for himself, and he's going to get 1,000+ yards. That's right. Put that on the board. We're keeping track of them all season long. Now, juicy hot take number 3. This is straight homer, and I don't care. My boy from the University of Florida, my alma mater, Vernon Hargreaves, going to have 5 or more interceptions this season. We put him outside of the corner. We put him back into the slot, and I think he's going to be making some bread for that. He's going to be touching a lot of pigskin. He's going to have 5 or more interceptions. The thing about him is he's an intelligent player. He's going to confuse quarterbacks. He's going to get in their heads. They're going to be like, where's Vernon Hargreaves? Where is he? I don't know. They're not going to know what's going to happen. And bam, he's going to pick them off right then and there. 5 interceptions. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's juicy hot take number 3. Put it on the board. Let's go over them again. JPP, 11.5 sacks this season. Peyton Barber, rushing 1,000 yards, baby. Don't sleep on me. And Vernon Hargreaves making that bread in the slot. 5 or more interceptions. You heard it here first. And it all starts with game number 1 against the Saints this Sunday, September 9th, 1 p.m. Eastern. Bryce has got the...
And y'all know what time it is, Bucs fans. It's the 4th quarter. Or as we affectionately call it here at the Buc Bros Podcast, the Money Quarter. DJ, hit me.
Every day I think about the money. Let's go. What am I gonna do with all this money?
Woo!
I can't go.
That's right. It's the fourth quarter. And you know what that means? It's time for our Game 1 predictions. The Buccaneers head into the Bayou, New Orleans, for our first game of the season. So let's break it down. All right, so first I just want to kind of talk about overall how New Orleans has done over the past 5 years in their opening games versus how Tampa's done in their opening game over the last 5 years. So, good news, Bucs fans. New Orleans hasn't actually won their opening game in 5 years. That's right. They are 0-4 of the last 4 seasons when it comes to their first game of the season. I know it was kind of a shocker when I looked into it, but that's right. Even though they were in first place last year, 11-5 record, they started the season 0-2. And I think that it probably has something to do with kind of getting the flow, kind of the flow of the season, and they don't typically start out, offenses don't typically start out hot, and that's what New Orleans is kind of known for. So that kind of bodes well for us Buccaneers, but it's not like we're setting the world on fire either. Over the last 5 seasons, we're 2-3 in our first games of the season, with our last one coming in last season against Chicago. Technically, that was week 2, but y'all remember the hurricane that came through in week 1 and postponed our game against the Dolphins till week 11. With that being said, I'm really hoping the 2016 season opener against Atlanta, when we went to Atlanta and went on the road, is more of a harbinger of things to come for the 2018 season. However, that being said, we will not have Jameis Winston to start this game. Fitzmagic, got a good beard like mine. I mean, he's trying to gain like a beard like mine, but I got that better beard, and you know it, Bucs fans. That being said, Fitzmagic, if you will be starting quarterback going into the first game. So if you guys don't remember, last season, the last time we played at New Orleans, Fitzmagic came in for Winston when he was hurt and started the second half of the game. I took a look into his stats for that game, and he went about, I think he was 8 for 15, 68 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. And then he had about 30 yards rushing. So overall, I mean, nothing to be excited about. But the other thing is he didn't drop the ball either. We only had 1 touchdown in that game, and he's the one who led us on that touchdown drive. So somewhat encouraging to see. He had an encouraging preseason as well too. Nothing spectacular, but I don't think we're expecting anything spectacular from Fitzy. All we're looking for is for him to manage the game, keep us in the game, make sure it's not, we don't lose the game based on turnovers or interceptions. And that's kind of what I'm anticipating from game 1. I think Fitzmagic's going to have a couple of touchdowns here or there. Most likely maybe 1 or 2 through the air. I could see a QB draw if we get into the red zone where he scrambles for a touchdown. So, but I don't think he's going to light the scoreboard. It's just not going to happen. Now we're going to have to hope that New Orleans doesn't light up the scoreboard on us, and hopefully that defensive front that we invested in so heavily this offseason will come up with a couple sacks against Drew Brees. Well, that being said, though, one thing that is helping us for this game is that New Orleans will be without their top running back from last season, Mark Ingram, as he has been suspended for the first 4 games due to violation of the performance-enhancing drug policy of the NFL. So we do got that going for us. However, they have another dynamic back in Alvin Kamara, which gave us some problems last season. Heck of a player there. Runs well, catches out of the backfield even better. So it's going to be hard for our defense to contain that guy. But at least we only got 1 matchup to worry about there versus the double-headed sword of Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. And then obviously anytime we go against Drew Brees in his own house, it's definitely a challenge. So again, hopefully history will repeat itself and their poor and slow performances out the gate will help us contain kind of that dynamic offense that New Orleans is known for. I think I want to touch on one key matchup. Every time we do a prediction, we're going to have a key matchup that we're looking forward to. And for me, personally, I think the key matchup here, and one that probably everybody's really looking forward to see, is the Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore matchup. So Mike Evans is a tall, physical, dynamic receiver, obviously. And, physically, he's going to he would dominate Marshawn Lattimore if you're just looking at physical traits, right? But Marshawn Lattimore made a splash on the scene last year becoming I think he was NFL Defensive Player or Rookie of the Year. Shutdown corner. I think the last time Evans and him matched up in New Orleans, he held Evans to 2 to 3 catches for 30-something yards. So definitely Marshawn got the better of him the last time we were in New Orleans. So I'm hoping to see that, and what we're looking for is a couple, and I don't think it's going to take 7, 8 to 9 catches, but somewhere in the 5 to 6 to 70, 80 yards with, using his size if we get into the red zone to do some fades to the back of the end zone where he can jump up and win those jump balls. It'll be something that I think we're really, us Bucs fans would be looking forward to. But we know it's going to be a tough matchup, and hopefully Evans will come out on top as we start our season here in Week 1. All right, well, with that being said, it's prediction time. And, I'm really amped up for the season, so it's probably a little bit of an optimistic view. We don't have our starting quarterback, but they don't have their starting running back either, so that's kind of a wash. I think the defenses will probably dictate this game more so than the offenses, even so with New Orleans having home field advantage. I just think that the history of New Orleans starting slower than they typically are during the midseason is going to come into play, and I think, the hype from their last season was kind of, is going to kind of drag them into this season. So for me personally, my prediction is a Tampa Bay victory with Tampa Bay scoring 21, New Orleans scoring 18. So that's my prediction for this first game. Let's start off 1-0, undefeated, and get the season off right. All right, thanks, Bucs fans, for tuning in to this third episode of the Buc Bros Podcast. Looking forward to this first game, Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So check your local listings, and hopefully you'll be able to catch it in your neighborhood. And we'll see you guys next week when we take on the Super Bowl champion Eagles at home for the home opener. Thanks, guys. See ya.